But on this night, we do what we want. We make our own rules. This is our night. This is
our show.
On this night, we rise.
This is the bleeding edge of science, technology, and ethics. This is
Solution. Unwilling to submit.
We learn all that is learnable.
Tonight, power shifts. Tonight, we raise our instruments of anarchy.
Peaceful coexistence, encryption, software, secure devices, and our minds.
Tonight, we are unbound by law.
It's time for Sovryn Tech. And now your host, the golden stallion of the tech world, the rated R radio star, Brian Sovryn.
Fundraiser, pre-sale. Woo, fundraiser here. Give me more money because I already mishandled all the $300,000 I got before. Woo, give me a fundraiser. Woo, I'm going to sell you some ARC, which back in upstate New York, that stood for, well, I'm not going to talk about it, but it's a little blue bus. Woo, ARC, oh my God, oh yeah. Woo. Holy fucking piss. The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, the man that some call the most interesting anarchist in the world today. Right here for you. And I'm going to open it right up with a little update on the subject that we talked about last week because of all the heat. And a lot of the congratulations, actually. But a lot of the heat that I got for bringing up, for going after Arcade City and the, no, I won't say that. And Christopher David. Now, we said last week, don't worry, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. There's so much shit that came out this week. We'll get to all that, okay? But last week, we were told that this week, actually the week before the last, we were also told that Arcade City would be available up and running in Austin. And then we were told this week that it would be up in Austin and blah, blah, blah. Where is it? It's not here. There's some, ridiculous fucking video on YouTube of Christopher David supposedly showing off the app on a Samsung phone of some kind. Hopefully it's not a Galaxy Note 7 and it doesn't blow up in his face, much like Arcade City is blowing up in everybody else's face. But wow, it's not here. I thought this was the week it was going to be out. This week, he said so at that Blockchain World Congress, whatever, in New York City last week. And it was, that was confirmed on Arcade City's own official Medium site. Medium blog posts and whatever. Where is it? It's not here. Now, in fact, the app's not even out. This karma bullshit's still going on, and you should watch the video because that video isn't showing shit. There's certainly no sign of any kind of blockchain. Now what do we have? Now, supposedly there's a proposal going on for ARC, which is the in-game currency, and boy, talk about game, emphasis on the game, the in-game currency for Arcade City, supposedly. So, and there's going to be a pre-sale, and the pre-sale is going to cap out. This is unbelievable. The pre-sale is going to cap out at $550 million. Brother, you couldn't handle 270,000. Who the hell's going to eat? Oh. $550 million. It's like, oh, well, if we reach 550 million, yeah, we'll just stop, but that's going to be the max out on ARC. Folks, if you're still buying into this, why are you giving this any more money? There should not be any kind of crowd sale or fundraiser or whatever they want to call it because they're so scared of all the legal ramifications and everything, which, really, if people were scared of the legal ramifications, you wouldn't be opening up in Austin, where obviously the municipality is hostile to this whole ride sharing thing like Uber and, and Lyft. If you cared so much about the law, just fucking come out and say it. This is so fucking dumb. This is so dumb. Now, will they maybe, let's say that this actually goes through and wow, people share last week's episode of Sovryn Tech, please. Hashtag it Arcade City. Hashtag it scandal. Please don't let friends invest in bullshit fucking projects. Do you understand? Please do something about this. It was bad enough, okay, that all that money's been squandered, admittedly so, by some of the investors in the fucking project. Okay, it's bad enough, but now they're going to do a fucking fundraiser with Arcade City? They're going to take more money? Don't let this go on. Do not let this go on. Don't make me already lose more faith that I have in humanity. Where was I? So there's a fundraiser going on. We still don't have, after multiple times promising, we still don't have a single city unlocked with this goddamn thing. Where is this? I talked about, maybe it was 2-3 weeks ago, I talked about Scenario, Synereo. It doesn't excite me at all, really. There have been some new things that have come to light, some of which I actually like about Scenario, in that I think Arcade City and really a lot of other blockchain, even though Arcade City doesn't fucking need a blockchain, that's a marketing trick like we talked about last week, so that I think a lot of blockchain projects might want to pay attention to. Okay, first off is that I heard an interview with one of the lead guys at Scenario. It was on the Tatiana show, that being Tatiana Moroz, which I was on that this week. I'll talk about that in a second. I was on that, quote unquote, debating the Steemit developers. But anyway, so Scenario, like when Tatiana was interviewing the guy, like he was making this point. I thought some of the things he had to say were ridiculous, but other things, a couple things I actually really agreed with. One of them is that you can't, there's no way we can actually do decentralization, which is what Scenario is looking to do, actual decentralization of social media and all this, as to where Steemit is not actually decentralization, because do you have a Steemit blockchain on your computer? No. Oh, okay. But anyway, he said that, this isn't something for, grandma's not going to be able to use this. That's not going to happen. That it's going to be something that the next generation, hopefully, will be tech savvy enough to take advantage of. Oh man, do I agree with that. I so agree with that. Like I get so annoyed when people talk about, let's, we got to make Bitcoin for grandma. No, grandma doesn't want Bitcoin. She doesn't understand why it's necessary. She doesn't need it. That's fucking bullshit. So I kind of agreed with the guy's point from Scenario, saying that, yeah, if you're wanting like a one-click affair, that's not what this is about. And I was like, oh, finally, a project that actually says that. This is not about becoming a one-click affair, because I get so tired of that. I mean, there's a place for those things, but let's be clear that if you want actual security, you want actually, you want distributed networks, you want real peer-to-peer and all this, it's not going to be that easy. It's not going to be one-click access. So I appreciated that. The other thing that Scenario did this in the past week, that I think is worth mentioning, is that they have their own, it's not ARC, but it's AMP. They have their own, in-game currency, as I call it. That's just a colloquialism I'm using for it. They burned like half of the AMP, that has been, I'll say mined, in Scenario. And that is the half that belongs to the developers. And the reason they did this is because they want to show that the developers want to show that they don't want to control the blockchain. They don't want to have undue influence, or not undue, but they don't want to have the influence. They don't want the power. Awesome. It's like burning the One Ring in Lord of the Rings. That's the way to go. I love that. I think that's fantastic. You don't have to do it that way, okay? And I can understand why people don't do it that way, but I think that that's a hell of a gesture. That's a great move. Now, is Christopher David going to do that with ARC? inside of Arcade City? Probably not, because this whole thing is about fame, glory, and some money. Not about actually, say, improving people's lives and etc. In my opinion. Oh, man. So there's your Arcade City update. There's nothing. And all that's getting now what's happening is there's just more schemes to get more money and to get a lot and to, you know, end up taking a whole lot of money out of other people's pockets. Unbelievable. And who the fuck? I mean, who does anybody think they are? Kind of, you know, saying that, well, we'll do a $550 million cap. Baby, you should do a cap, maybe at $300,000. That way you have a little money left over to help finish the app, and then you could maybe pay back the people's money that you squandered the fuck out of. Maybe you should do $1 million, just because I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other people's time that I don't know exactly how you quantify into dollars that has been taken. Unbelievable. I'll keep saying it because it is. I mean, just where I come from. They say the chutzpah, and I don't mean that in a positive sense, the chutzpah to ask for more money in this situation from everybody. This isn't just some kind of like VC round. This is about, probably because they couldn't get any. I'm guessing ARC is probably a response, and I'm guessing, this is speculation, I'm guessing that maybe they couldn't find anybody else to invest in because, well, wait a minute, you don't have any quarterly plans, you don't have any long-term things. Well, yes, Mr. VC, but Amazon didn't make money for 10 years. Yeah, but Jeff Bezos had a fucking plan for 10 years. He had a long-term plan that he kept, he kept what's the word? Snake charming. He kept snake charming all of the investors with and kept doing bond sales and all this different stuff. But he could do that and people would buy the bonds because he said, look, I know what I'm doing. I've got this plan. You've just got to hold on. And then finally this year, yes, Amazon started making money, but it took a while to get that plan going. But he had to have that plan on paper first. And he had that plan. The plan had to be a decade long for people to understand. They had to understand that it was a long game and then it finally paid off. Arcade City does not have such a long game planned out. If they do, it's all shit in somebody's head. Okay, it's not something that's done proper the way that business normally gets done. Oh, it drives me nuts. But I want to say thank you. So we can move on to other subjects. I want to say thank you to the Sovryn Tech listeners and a lot of new listeners that came in that really appreciated the work that Roger Paxton did over at the Lava Flow podcast. Please check that podcast out if you haven't. And that appreciated what I brought up as well. I'm really honored. Welcome aboard. Welcome to the cabal, as I say, on Sovryn Tech. Thank you. I'm glad that it spoke to people and that, and I got emails from people who said, I was excited about Arcade City. I heard I heard last week's episode. No longer. Good. Keep that momentum going because this is fucking bullshit. I use that word a lot, but I guarantee you I'm using it in the strongest possible sense when it comes to this. Even if an app does come out eventually, I don't trust the business. I don't trust Arcade City itself, even if an app comes out, because this is, and you can say, man, don't go through like the learn. You say, well, everybody's got to learn. Everybody deserves second chances. Sure. But don't do second chances and don't be learning on other people's money, especially with this dumb fucking ARC a fundraiser / crowd sale / whatever. I get sick of it. There's some projects that I think, crowd sales and fundraisers, those are absolutely legitimate. And you have, you have good reasons, to want to get involved with it, or things are, you have some signs of things looking up and things looking really good in all this. Or the scope of the project perhaps is just so large or it's so different, which Arcade City is neither. It is not large in scope. Really, it's not, folks. It's not changing the fundamentals of how, perhaps communication works. You think of something like MadeSafe. That is literally changing the fundamentals of networking. That's huge. Okay, so that's different. And also, it's not doing anything that's like really that groundbreaking either. It'd be something if it's not large in scope, but it's groundbreaking what it's going to offer. You take a project like Zcash. That's groundbreaking. To have genuinely anonymous, money. The real fucking deal. Okay, so if they want to do a crowd sale, fine. I get it. But there's nothing here. There's nothing here that requires that amount of money. There's nothing here that requires a blockchain, that requires decentralization, that requires all of these things. There's nothing there. Now, speaking of all that, I want to change gears. Okay, I was on the Tatiana show this week. I released it. You can listen to the show for free. It's on the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. You can go to TatianaMoroz.com and you can find it there. Perhaps I'll put a link in the show notes for it. But I did, Stephanie, the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and I did a kind of an opening intro to where I released it through Patreon, through the Patreon channel, which people are just loving that. The Sovryn Tech Patreon, because you're getting all those exclusive episodes, you're getting all the Q&As every week, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I got a ton of stuff coming out this week as well, exclusive episodes that you just will not hear anywhere else. Okay. But I released that, and I released an opening commentary to it. And the main point that I want to bring up, if any Sovryn Tech listener went and listened to that, you got to understand, and this isn't Tatiana's fault by no means. I got in all of maybe 6 sentences. Like Stephanie, as soon as we were done with this quote unquote debate, Stephanie said to me, "He's like, wow, you barely got to say anything." And that's because I was being kind of nice and gracious. And so it was between myself, Ned Scott, Dan Larimer, who are the two, bigwigs at Steemit. Okay. And then Tatiana was there and her co-host, Josh from Valtoro, and also Ryan Singer of Blockchain Health, I believe. And so, we're talking 6 people here, and you only have an hour, about a little over an hour. Okay. And there were some audience questions and all this stuff. And so I was, what I was asking, the points, people thought it's like, well, those are really basic questions. Yeah, but I was trying to get the answers to them because they were leading questions. I was leading to a point. And the point being is that I don't see, just like Arcade City, I don't see any reason that this needs to be on a blockchain. I don't, and it's not decentralized at all, as is obviously proven. Go ahead. You email me. I want emails from, let's see, at least 2,000 people. How about that? Okay. Because, Sovryn Tech has a few thousand listeners. So this may be a quarter of my audience. Okay. I want emails from 2,000 people that you have the Steemit blockchain on your computers. Because if you don't, if I don't get emails from 2,000 people, it's not decentralized. Right? Because you're not actually holding the blockchain. And, blockchain technology, the beauty of it, the thing that's supposed to get people excited about it is the fact that, it is decentralized. It's peer-to-peer. This is not so. This is just a blockchain getting used for whole other, ridiculous purposes, none of which nobody asked for and none of which are necessary. Anyway, that was kind of where my line of questioning was going. And then I was hoping that other people were going to ask the economic questions, which Josh was going to, but there just wasn't time. We ran out of time because the Steemit developers just kept running their mouths. And that's a problem too. That's a problem in itself, is when people can't just break down a project into 10 words or something. They have to, be really verbose. I appreciated being on the show. I appreciated everybody's time. I thought it was still an informative show in many ways, but understand that I had pages and pages of questions to ask and I did not get to them. All right. So, if you're wondering, it's like, wow, where was the stallion? Well, the stallion was not cut off. Okay. But we did not have time. By the time they were done explaining Steemit, it was already 40 minutes into an hour show. So yeah, but my point stands is that I think a lot of this is marketing. There is no need for half of the technology getting used in this. It is overly complex. And in fact, that there's a couple takeaways from that interview if you listen to it, okay, or from that quote unquote debate, is that this is an incredibly complex thing, which, as we say on Sovryn Tech all the time, complexity is the enemy of security. Okay, and it's also it's financially complex and it keeps changing and it gets very, very strange. So you have that aspect of it. And then you hear a couple times where Dan Larimer specifically says this is an experiment. Thank you. Yes, this is an experiment. Let's treat it as such, not as something that is changing the world, not as something that is going to, bring freedom and is going to make everybody a ton of money and all this shit. Okay, this is an experiment. And if it was labeled as that, I wouldn't give a shit. But that's not how it's touted. It's touted as something much larger. Whatever. So, in fact, it's funny. That show that I did on the Tatiana show got shared on Steemit itself. And once again, content based around my appearance on something or my involvement in something became one of the top grossing and one of like the top 3 posts on the network. So I'm going to make a guess here, or I'm going to say this. I don't think, I know what is it? Steemit's like, proof of stake POS, right? I think it stands for proof of sovereign because I feel like I'm the one holding up that fucking network. In fact, they started being able to like there was some price movement and some, the value went up a bit with Steemit after that was released. So, this is my last time really talking about Steemit because apparently I'm the one that holds it up. And so now Sovryn Atlas is going to shrug. And I will not allow what I resist to persist. So there we go. That's, Steemit will probably be gone. This is just a guess, 6 months. At least I don't expect it to last past 2 years. But I'll give it maybe January. We'll see how that all shapes up. Anyway, enough of that. Wow. I have a ton of random access to get into, but I wanted to get that shit out of the way. Understand that I had very little time and I tried to be really short in my questions on that whole Steemit thing. But that just wasn't, they couldn't be short. They had to just keep talking. And oh man, as they was talking, I was writing stuff down. I actually, if you're on the Patreon, if you go to the episode on Patreon, I attached pictures of all the notes I took because I wanted people to see this is like all the things I wanted to bring up. Like I wanted to know, how popular are posts that are related to YouTube videos? And if those are some of the most popular, then really aren't you just a bullshit middleman and YouTube is the real social network, which is a point I've brought up many. That's also a critique I have of Scenario because they've admitted that they can't do video right now. But if those are the most popular things, then just get out of the way. YouTube's the thing. You're not. You're a waste. And coders and engineers, last time I checked, as the son of an engineer and a coder myself, getting rid of the non-essentials is quintessential to, creating a beautiful thing, to design. Whatever. Anyway, all right, let's get into, I've got a doozy of an opening story that I want to get into, but let's get into the random access a bit. Wow. 500 million accounts, not $500 million like somehow Arcade City thinks they're going to make. Woo, man. Electroplated dreams, all right. But anyway, 500 million accounts, according to, this had been revealed, I believe it was the Wall Street Journal, that Yahoo accounts had been cracked. And that this happened back in 2014. Crazy. This is the price of centralization. Both products we were just talking about, Steemit and Arcade City. Arcade City could have, if it really wanted to get out there, could have been a centralized service. And in my opinion, Steemit really is. It's not actually decentralized at all. And I gave you the criteria that I want to prove that it isn't. That's the danger of having centralization, which, again, maybe those products really are or really are going to be blah, 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 is that this is what happens. These accounts get cracked. Now, 2014, two-factor authentication was a thing, but it wasn't like perhaps as commonplace as things have, or as it is now. Like now, most of the websites I ever go to do offer some form of two-factor authentication. Whether or not it's the best implementation is another story, but at least it's available. So in 2014, this is interesting. I mean, we talked about Yahoo back then. Now, Yahoo is claiming, when they were asked to talk about this crack that happened. And I shouldn't have to say this, but I'll say it anyway. If you haven't changed if you're using Yahoo, first off, stop. If you haven't changed your Yahoo password though, and you are still using it, I get it. Some people have had their Yahoo email accounts for, literally for decades. And okay, that's fine. I used to have one. Tank Program 00 at Yahoo, or whatever it was, yahoo.com, I think. No, it wasn't Ymail. That was an option later on. Anyway, if you haven't changed your password since 2014, do so now. Okay, it's a little late, but do so now. But what's interesting is that at that time, I think in 2014, so this was after Marissa Mayer took over, and she was talking about, at the time, they were going to implement end-to-end encryption in Yahoo, in Yahoo Mail, which I think they effectively have. Like they have put in some degree of PGP. Now, I wonder if this is a response to that. If implementing encryption in Yahoo Mail was a response to this crack that they knew happened that they never told anybody about. Okay, I could believe that. Now, Yahoo said that this was by a state-sponsored attacker. This was a, some state-level attacker, did this crack to where 500 million accounts, information was taken from, broken into, blah, blah, blah. I'm intrigued by this because also, at the time, we knew, this is back, shortly after the Snowden revelations, that Yahoo was, they actually would not turn over user information to the U.S. government. And the U.S. government was fining them $250,000 a day that they didn't. If they wouldn't hand over user information, they were going to fine them $250,000 a day. Now, I think that's more of the reason that they wanted to go with, encrypted email. That way, if they encrypted everything, and the U.S. government came a knocking on the door, they'd say, look, it's all done client side. We can't do anything about this. Even though really wouldn't have been done client side if it was in Yahoo Mail, but it might have been a direction that they were going, and I applaud them for that. And I applaud them actually for standing up and saying, no, we're not going to do it. And for a little while, I think actually they were paying the $250,000. They're trying to call the U.S. government's bluff, but it wasn't a bluff. So I could believe, all of that information combined from that time frame. And again, most people in tech journalism and in the tech world have absolutely no sense of history. They can't remember what happened last week. Who's even talking about the Apple versus FBI case anymore when a lot of tech journalists were saying, oh, this is going to be the story that goes on for years. Nope. But anyway, years ago, back in 2014, when supposedly this happened, that would have fit into the time frame to where Yahoo wasn't playing ball with the U.S. government. And so I wouldn't be shocked if this hack, or crack more accurately because it's malicious, especially if it came from a state actor. And again, all states are tyrannies, folks. They're all malicious. That was done actually by the U.S. government. I could believe that. I don't know that for certain. Maybe even Yahoo doesn't know, but I could believe that that's exactly what happened. Now, the solution to this, some people have made some intriguing solutions, and it's a time to refresh oneself on great, password policies, and all of this. Some people have recommended, and I can understand this recommendation, that you actually use Facebook's OAuth system to log into everything that you can. Okay, that way you're not giving specific credentials to Yahoo that's going to affect perhaps, other areas of your digital life. And people are recommending that because if you're using, with your Facebook login, if you are using the code generator on the Facebook app, or, even some kind of, other two-factor authentication, though the code generator is, really great. I mean, this is, I don't want to get off track, but this is a hard thing for me to describe, is that a lot of these security features that Facebook puts in place are pretty good. They're the right move. The code generator is the right move. Having it built into the app, it's pretty secure. I mean, you're not trusting Authy, you're not trusting any other authenticator app. And so to have that, and the way that they set up OAuth was pretty good. Granted, you're still feeding in. This is the problem. The big problem with all of the different things that Facebook does, whether they're implementing Signal, we'll talk more about that later, whether they're implementing, Tor or whatever. The problem is it's still a metadata honeypot, no matter what you do. It's still a data honeypot, no matter how they set things up. But some people were saying, log into everything with Facebook because you can definitely secure your Facebook account pretty well. And honestly, they're right. You can secure your Facebook account from everybody else. You can't secure it from Facebook, obviously, because it's Facebook. But you can secure it from everybody else pretty well. So that's one thing to consider. And I do think Yahoo and, lots of services offer a Facebook account login. Again, you're giving all of that data to Facebook. I don't agree with doing that at all. All right. But in the consumer grand scheme of things, it's not the worst advice I've ever heard. Using password managers, all these different things, those are all really, great things to do. I mean, a great policy also to do is to change your password, regularly, all the time, and use crazy passwords, that use special characters, they use numbers, capital letters, small letters. I mean, shake it up and don't use a pattern. Please do not use a pattern. I recommend always, my recommendation isn't even really to use a password manager, though there is LastPass, NPass, KeyPass, 1Password. There's a bunch out there that are pretty good. And if you need that convenience, go for it. My personal favorite, though, is the Little Black Book when it comes to password management. And the Little Black Book is literally just that. It's a very tiny Moleskine book, like those little journals, and you can get smaller ones, that are only like 4 inches by maybe 2 inches or something, very small. And in that, you keep track of all your passwords, and maybe even, for each account, because you don't want that many, hopefully you don't have so many accounts, but for each account, maybe you could have one page and you just keep changing the password, every month, or, at worst every 6 months or something like this, to make sure that, if a hack like what happened with the 500 million accounts at Yahoo occurred, it becomes meaningless, at least in a short period of time, for whoever did, whoever enacted that crack. So, the Little Black Book, and I mean, the advantages to that are, again, it's not in some cloud service, which can get questionable with things like LastPass. And if somebody ever wanted your passwords, you can make them disappear like nothing else, meaning you can just set that book on fire if it's that serious of a situation, to where, like Yahoo, you have perhaps state actors coming after you. So the Little Black Book is definitely my, that's my go-to as far as a lot of the stuff goes. But not a shock, what happened with Yahoo here. Again, as I said, this is also something we talked about 2-3 weeks ago. I think we were talking about, who was it that guy? Oh, Dropbox. It was the Dropbox hack. That was 69 million accounts that got cracked. Like I said then, and it's true now, honestly, every single online account, okay, at least with the business in the US, is effectively cracked. Everybody's hacked. Because you have the NSA, you have various alphabet soup organizations all around the world, GCHQ, whoever, okay, that, they have access to all the keys. We're going to talk more about this in the second segment of the show during First Choice when we're going to talk about Allo and Facebook Messenger, because Snowden has some words on this and maybe you'll listen to him if you don't listen to me, that are very appertinent to what we're talking about here. So anyway, the Yahoo hack, crazy. Surprising? Not at all. And again, remember, everybody is literally hacked. I mean, you just are, as long as there's governments, or as long as I can't imagine a government that would respect, sovereignty of one's digital existence. But as long as, these systems exist, well, there you have it. Let's move on from that. Here's a little, actually, this was a listener question that I got, and I want to address it here. And it was about, I think last week I mentioned there is an operating system that I'm intrigued by that I've been following since it was announced, called RedoxOS. Okay. Which it's written in Rust. Okay. And it's actually, so it's not really meant to be like a Linux alternative. It's meant to kind of replace Linux and actually integrate a lot of the, kind of like how FreeBSD can run Linux software. RedoxOS is looking to get to the point to where it can run Linux software. Just the kernel is, a lot more secure and just has a lot more options going to it. I don't want to get, too much into the technical details on that. But the question that the person asked me was, how is that pronounced? Is it pronounced Redox or Redox? And the official pronunciation, I got in touch with developers. The official pronunciation is Redux OS. And if you know what Redux is as compared to Rust, as in the scientific world, not in the tech world, it's kind of a funny little joke. But that is the pronunciation is Redux. So, RE and then, RE dash, I mean, that's not how you spell it, but the idea is RE, and then docs. But anyway, so there, we have that out of the way. Woo, boy, I have a ton of other stuff to bring up. I'll bring up one last one, and the others I'm going to have to just put off till next week. Twitter, now it is getting very serious. We talked about this, maybe it was last week or the week before, that the boardroom meetings are happening where how do we sell off Twitter? Who are we going to sell off? And some names are already getting tossed around. Now, these are somewhat rumors. They are conjecture to a degree, but I mean, they are based upon a rumor mill, as in, there are people talking about it that are supposedly in these boardroom meetings. Google is one of the obvious choices. Of course, we've talked about on Sovryn Tech that Google would likely buy Twitter. I mean, we've been saying that for years. But the one that I think is the more interesting play and actually the most viable right now is one that was brought up, and that was Microsoft. That is my, if we're placing bets on who's going to buy Twitter, that's where my bet is placed, is that it's going to be Microsoft. Shockingly, Amazon was not in that list, which I thought that would have made a ton of sense. And the one that kind of the dark horse in this whole thing that I didn't even think about was Salesforce is looking perhaps to buy Twitter. Now that's interesting because Microsoft at one point was going to buy Salesforce. So I mean, there's the chance that what could happen here is that Salesforce could buy Twitter, and then Microsoft could buy out Salesforce, and then in turn end up owning Twitter and kind of get it as a package deal. So I'm going to say this, is that I think Microsoft is the company that's going to end up buying Twitter. And I think that if Salesforce ends up buying Twitter, that might still be true, because this could all be a backroom deal, acquisition plan that's getting set up to where, we'll buy Twitter, and then later on they can move in and, and Microsoft, can buy out Salesforce, and then it doesn't look so sketchy, right? At least for the average person. So at the end of the day, if it is Salesforce, I think it's still technically, and perhaps it's all by design and plan, that it will be Microsoft being the one buying Twitter. But maybe Google will do it. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I can see, it's. I think that there's a move for that, especially when you look at how Google and Twitter have kind of patched things up, and I don't mean that in a coding sense, but how they've patched things up personally. To where, now you can Google search tweets and all this different stuff that for a couple of years that wasn't. So, could lend one to believe that there is, that Google might be seriously looking at acquiring it. But my guess is it's going to be Microsoft. And like we said, Twitter likely can't, a lot of analysts have said that Twitter cannot last outside of 2016. Like on its own, it just can't. And there's interesting things going on. There's, the NFL on Twitter and all this different stuff. Not that I care about that. I'm a baseball guy. But whatever. Anyway, that's something that's coming. So enough of that. I'm going to have to save. I was going to talk about Demon Saw. I was going to talk about Poloniex. What's happening with that in my home geographic area of New Hampshire. I will save that for next week. I was going to talk about AdBlock Plus selling ads. I'll save that for next week. Always plenty to talk about on Sovryn Tech, no doubt about it. Now, again, one of the things that can help with this is that if we could get to the point to where I can afford to do 2 episodes of Sovryn Tech a week, then I could easily cover, or not easily, but more easily cover a lot of these stories that we just cannot jam into 2 hours of Sovryn Tech. And the way you can make that happen is if you become a subscriber on on Sovryn Tech, Patreon. If you become a Sovryn Tech patron, we have a $500 goal. We're at like 160 now, so we're almost 2/5 of the way there. If we can get to $500 a month. All right, not per episode, $500 a month on Patreon, I can afford to do 2 episodes of Sovryn Tech per week. And that second episode, of course, will have interviews. It'll have all kinds of things on it. And it can cover a lot more of this news that we just cannot, and it's all very important news, and we just cannot squeeze it in, to one episode of Sovereign Tech a week. So anyway, if you want to help out with that, please go to patreon.com/sovereigntech. The link is in the show notes, of course, and we're in is this episode 194? Holy shit. We're almost to episode 199, which I got something beautiful cooked up for that. It'll be our little Halloween episode, and then we have episode 200. Oh, it's going to be good. But anyway, let's get into our main story, and we'll save that other random access perhaps for next week. So for our main story this week, I kind of want to do a bit of an expose. But I'm going to take on the biggest companies in the world this time around. I had something happened about 2 weeks ago, and I kind of wanted to get into it last week, but I didn't get the opportunity. So I'm going to make sure I take the opportunity now. That, to say it pissed me off, to say I was livid is an understatement. It really was not cool, especially when it was happening. And first world problem, absolutely. I'll make that clear. But a lot of the tech problems we have are very much first world problems. But then that's how we grow, is that, we build systems and we get to the point to where, it's not a problem for the first world or the developing world. But anyway, this isn't as serious perhaps as other things we've talked about in the show, because what we're going to talk about is the music industry. And the music industry is, so intricately tied with technology now. I mean, the days of analog music, unfortunately, are gone. At least it's not for everybody. I love people that collect vinyl. I think that's wonderful. I've said many times, I think the great, speaking of tech, really sound tech anyway, the greatest sound I've ever heard is not Dolby Atmos. It's not 7.1 or 8.1 or 5.1, Dolby or whatever. It's quadraphonic. God, I love that. Satan, I love that. Sorry. There is no God. But anyway, yeah, quadraphonic sound, so good. So I love people that collect vinyl and that are into, keeping a lot of those different sound technologies alive. But anyway, today, with sound technology and with, how does music get disseminated, vinyl is not really the order of the day. Streaming now, nothing physical is really the order of the day. It is all down, or not all, but it is mostly down to streaming. And you have various streaming services, all of which I have talked about before and that we've gotten into before. A lot of people ask me all the time, what do you think is the best? Is Pandora the best? Is Spotify the best? Is Microsoft's Groove the best? Which Groove isn't necessarily the best. I'm going to talk about that more in a second. But it is the service with literally the most songs on it. It has shy of 40 million, which is double most of the other services that I've listed off, what they offer. Is Spotify the best? Is Amazon's Prime Music the best? Well, if you pay for Prime, yeah, it's a great deal. It comes with it. Or is Google Play Music All Access the best? And there's others. Was there Deezer, which I think they're owned by Stitcher now, or however that deal ended up working out. So what I mainly use, because of, the concept that I talk about on Sovereign Tech, that being software minimalism, which means sometimes the most secure software you can use is the software that automatically comes with, whatever device you happen to have, PC, phone, whatever. Okay. And by not putting more, bullshit apps or bullshit software on, you have less gateways to which your device could be exploited with. Okay, so that's software minimalism. Now, with that in mind, one of the things that every Android device, not dark Android, but every regular Android smartphone comes with, and I have very little hope in securing smartphones. I don't really think that's not terribly possible, at least not securing it perhaps from state actors or and others. But on an Android device, you have Google Play Music, and it's your default audio player on pretty much every Android device. And so, it's right there. And so I use it, and you get to, for free, you can upload up to now, I think it's like 50,000 songs or something like this. So I will use Google Play Music often. Also has a web portal, which makes it, very, very handy. And I've recommended over the years, it's generally been the one at the top of the list for a lot of the reasons that I just described. Also, I totally understand why, like parents and some others, pay for YouTube Red, which means you automatically get Google Play Music All Access, of course. Even though I'm mainly just using Google Play Music, I'm not using Google Play Music All Access. I'm not paying for that. But, if you use YouTube Red because you don't want your kids to be inundated with ads on YouTube and you don't happen to be using an ad blocker, which of course I recommend at all times, it's important with ad blockers that the onus is not on you, the user, to worry about how these companies, are going to advertise for you. Go ahead, secure your system first and foremost. Use a fucking ad blocker to secure shit. Okay. It's for them to figure out how to more ethically or more securely and perhaps ethically advertise to you. That's their job to figure out, not yours. You go ahead and you turn on all those ad blockers. Anyway, if you're paying for YouTube Red though, I understand you don't want your kids seeing a bunch of, or you don't want to see a bunch of ads. I believe me, I get that. And so you already have Google Play Music All Access and, so there's an advantage, to that sort of thing, but that's really been kind of top of the heap. Now, I've been using Google Play Music for years, for a very, very long time. I've used it and I've uploaded a lot of, kind of the advantage of Google Play Music All Access or Google Play Music in general was like, if you paid for all access, yeah, you get all, 20 million, 25 million songs, whatever that you get. But none of these services really have everything. Like Spotify doesn't have every song, even Microsoft doesn't have every song. So a lot of the rare stuff that I listen to, I like to upload, and have that way I could have the best of both worlds. Of course, now that Google Play Music updated the amount of songs you can upload to 50,000, because originally it was only like 20,000. I don't need all access. I can just put up my own personal collection. So I upload a lot of custom CDs, and not custom as in, they're official releases. I'm not like necessarily putting up bootlegs, though I do have some of those. But I'll upload those to have them, like maybe the remastered editions that Google Play wouldn't normally have, where there'd be bonus tracks and, and like an extra live disc and all this, all of which I really enjoy. So let's break down to what happened. Okay. I'm using Google Play Music. I'm working out. It's later at night and I'm working out. And I put on, I was putting on Double Dose, which is the 2-disc greatest hits for the band Poison. Love the band Poison. Just one of the best. If not in my top 10, certainly in my top 25, one of the greatest of all time. And I put in Double Dose, and starting right off, it's going through the tracks, and it's just about to put on Nothing But a Good Time, which is originally from Open Up and Say Ah, another great album. And when it goes to play it, suddenly it doesn't play Nothing But a Good Time. It doesn't open it up with that. Just, the great opening riff from C.C. DeVille, right? Instead, I start hearing Slaughter's Up All Night. Now, Slaughter's Up All Night, great song. Okay. Like, it's not like, it did a bait and switch on me with something that was shit. But that's not what was supposed to play. And so I was like, oh, what the fuck? It's like, all right, maybe this is just a fluke, and I tried, restarting the song a couple times to see if it was just, somehow Google got confused. But what I ended up doing was, it's like, okay, well, I'll go to Open Up and Say Ah, which of course I have the 2006 remastered version of uploaded. And I go there and I start, and it's like, okay, well, I'll just play it from here, because I really want to hear the song while I'm working out because, it's one of those songs that can really help you get pumped up, And so I go to play it on Open Up and Say Ah, not on the Greatest Hits album, which I was originally playing. And what happens? As soon as Nothing But a Good Times, as soon as I hit it, it starts playing Slaughter's Up All Night. What the hell is going on? And at this point, I'm still giving Google the benefit of the doubt. I'm still saying, it's like, all right, maybe this isn't such a big deal, right? And so I'll go up there and I will I went upstairs, to my big computer, and I was like, I'll just re-download the albums, and I'm sure the original file is fine. And maybe I'll just re-upload it or something. And so I downloaded both discs of Double Dose, the Greatest Hits album that I was playing. And then I downloaded the 2006 remaster of Open Up and Say Ah from Poison. And on both of those albums, when I downloaded it, I ended up with, when I go to double click and play in VLC, play Nothing But a Good Time, it played Slaughter's Up All Night. Up all night, sleep all day. I can't sing. Now that's enough of a what the fuck. Okay, that's enough of an indictment. And I mean, and we've talked about this before. This happened with iTunes, where a guy lost his entire collection, or where one of the journalists that was talking about, when Apple Music came out, that it overwrote a bunch of his live versions and rare versions of a bunch of different songs. So this isn't necessarily something new to happen with a streaming service. This is the first time I've ever seen it happen with Google Play Music. But it gets worse. I mean, that pissed me off enough, okay? But it gets far, far worse. I mean, obviously, we're making the case here that cloud storage and trusting that cloud storage with other companies is a dangerous game. Okay, obviously, we're making that case, but there's more. This goes deeper. This goes further. That version of Up All Night. Okay, so I'm a huge 80s metal fan, 80s, 90s, or, anything before Nirvana. Nirvana ruined everything. Okay. Yeah. And so I have, actually it's kind of a rare, I have the best of Slaughter. Okay. It's called Mass Slaughter is the name of the album. And that has a version of Up All Night on it. The thing is it has the full album version of Up All Night, and the full album version of Up All Night by Slaughter has this, like kind of this rah rah America, like where, I think it's doing the Star Spangled Banner or something in the beginning and at the end. And it has like kids singing it, it's supposed to sound very rebellious when, suddenly the Up All Night riff kind of comes in and, I like that. I kind of dig that. So I'm glad that version's on there. Anyway, the version that was taken. So that's what I have uploaded. Okay. Onto Google Play Music is that version of the song. The version that got wrote over Nothing But a Good Time by, Google's algorithms or whatever, it was the radio edit version of Up All Night. So it wasn't even a copy of the song that I have. So how the hell did that happen? Now, this has happened before, and you might laugh at this one. Okay. I have like this kind of little custom disc that I made of Enrique Iglesias's, kind of greatest hits. Okay. And there's the song I'm Not in Love. Now, the popular version of that song has, where a woman, it's a duet where a woman sings it with Enrique Iglesias. The version I had was just Enrique singing it. Now, there's a point where, and I don't know when exactly this happened, but it happened, years ago, that Google Play Music, because I used to be a Google fanboy, understand that. I'm not anymore at all. Okay, and we'll talk more about that in the next segment. But Enrique, that version somehow the version I had where it's just Enrique got written over by Google, by Google Play Music with the version that has the woman singing in it. Now, it wasn't a huge deal, and to some degree it almost made sense to me because I'm like, okay, and now I never tried re-downloading to look into it because it just wasn't a big deal. I don't listen to it that often anyway. Okay. But that one made some degree of sense because it's like, okay, it's the same song. It's just, this is the more popular version of it or whatever. This case with Nothing But a Good Time getting written over by Up All Night does not make any sense. I mean, yeah, you can say that they're both a product of their time, like that Slaughter and Poison are somewhat related, but I mean, Mark Slaughter's voice, like if this is all algorithmic, CC DeVille does not play like, the guitarist in Slaughter, and Mark Slaughter certainly does not sing, like Bret Michaels. So that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense how this even happened in the first place. I mean, it's so fucking off. But this is the danger. This is, and so let's get to the point here, is that this is the real danger with a lot of these cloud services, is that you really cannot trust that the version of the file you're putting up and out there, especially when it's one like Google Play Music, to where, there isn't a file manager for your music necessarily, unless you're keeping it locally stored as well. But even then, I wonder how that would shape up with this. But if you're just leaving your music up on the cloud and you don't keep a local copy, understand, I have copies of everything, so I didn't really lose anything here, but the average person probably does, especially the amount of music that I have, probably does not keep, a multi-terabyte hard drive around with all of their music on it. But, I don't, like, you can't really sue Google because they put it in their terms of service that when you use this, you know, I mean, and it's for free, of course, right? So what do you expect? What are you going to get out of them? It's free as in it doesn't cost a dollar amount that gets charged off of a credit card or something. Okay. Yes, it's not free in that it collects user data and all that and, infringes on your privacy, and sells it off to advertisers or whatever. But, the average person isn't going to have backups and all this. And this shit gets rewritten. But I mean, what do you do? Well, I mean, the first thing I'm going to tell you is you don't use Google Play Music anymore. Just like I don't recommend using Apple Music. I mean, this is crazy. This is it's so funny because all the things there's people that have for years that have said, look, the way we're talking about implementing the cloud now, there are some real problems with it. Trusting a lot of these companies with this shit, there's real problems with that. And so many people back then were saying, well, that's just theoretical. It's not really happening, blah, blah, blah. And hey, I know it's just a song by Poison. Okay, this isn't the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination. But I effectively lost what could potentially be rare data at some point. And it's just gone. Except I have a backup. But if I didn't have the backup, it would be gone. Yeah, I don't like this. I don't like that at all. Now, so I guess the question that a lot of people are going to ask me, well, what do you recommend using then if you want a cloud-based, music service? Well, the recommendations change. Okay, they've changed right now. Because of this absolute bullshit. Again, folks, it doesn't make any sense. There's no reason that this isn't a case where some live version of a song got rewritten by another version of Crazy Train, like what happened with Apple Music. This is a completely different song, one that I didn't even have a copy of, got put in place on album names believe me, I am so meticulous in how, in my ID3 tags and how I label everything. There was no fuck up there. There's no explanation for this other than Google sucks ass. This was, it just put the absolute dead wrong thing in that spot. And it doesn't make any sense because that song is nowhere else in my collection. It does not exist. It never existed. Okay. The only Slaughter album I've got, if you don't count the 2 Vinnie Vincent Invasions album that Mark Slaughter was on with Vinnie Vincent, the only one, and that has nothing to do with Up All Night. The only ones I've got, I have that Mass Slaughter, best of, because it's a super rare album. And fortunately nothing on there, I checked that out. But I have so many songs on there. Am I going to find others down the line that have been completely rewritten with something so fucking off base? This is bullshit. So the promise of the cloud, didn't deliver here. Now again, the idea of the cloud, the idea of things being stored, in other fashions, I can see the use case for that. I think, there's better ways to implement the cloud. We've talked about that, to implement, well, I don't want to say thin clients because that's really what the cloud is all about, but anyway, there's other ways to do this. Now, one service that actually does it a little more right, that I'm a little more intrigued by, but I don't trust any more than Google Play Music, would actually be Microsoft's Groove. Because now, if you're an Office 365 subscriber, there is a specific folder that gets created in your OneDrive, which is their version of Google Drive, called Music. That's it. It's just called Music. And I think you can put 100,000 songs in there and you can access them through the Groove Music app or through the web portal or, however you end up doing it, which, I've started testing this now because I'm taking everything away from Google Play Music. This is so heinous. Now, here's the difference though. Okay. So the Groove Music app actually works very well now. For years, it has not. Because I tried it originally when it first came to Android and it was shit. But not any longer. Now it can largely do, other than it doesn't have podcasts built into it, which like Google Play Music does. It can largely do anything, offline playing and all this different stuff that any of the other music streaming apps can do. But here's the key. Here's what's kind of nice about using Groove Music as my streaming service now, is that with OneDrive, I can see all of the, I can see the music. You are literally just uploading the files into a file manager. Okay, it's not all being done behind the scenes like it is with Google Play Music All Access. And Google Play Music also restricts largely how many times you can re-download something if you put it up in the cloud. Okay, so if you don't want to store all this stuff, locally somehow, then, I mean, it's a lot nicer to be able to have access to a file manager of all of these files like you can in OneDrive with that music folder than it is to just completely trust Google, because as is shown in my case, you can't trust them. And I haven't changed it yet either. I haven't fixed it because I'm still kind of figuring out, how I want to go about this. Am I going to do just some kind of wild, blog post that can catch wildfire or something? But man, like as soon as I said that, I almost tossed my phone and just said, fuck the cloud, fucking cloud. Oh, it ticked me off. So I had a bunch of other stuff I actually wanted to talk about with the music industry, but again, we're out of time. So I'm going to have to save that for another time. But Google Play Music, don't touch it. I wouldn't mess with Apple Music. Be careful with all of these cloud services, unless you're using, OwnCloud's a good option because, again, you have access to the file manager. And with OwnCloud, hell, you have access to the files themselves because it's working off of your own machine. There's go ahead and use OneDrive. If you have an Office 365 account, which a lot of people have to have, for whatever business they do and all this stuff, use that. Use something that gives you as much control as possible when it comes to the cloud. Because that's the real problem, is that a lot of these companies are not giving you control over your own data that's on the cloud. I mean, to say nothing of, 69 million people getting their shit hacked, with Dropbox, like we mentioned earlier, and other things. Drives me nuts. Hey, I want to tell you about one of the great sponsors of Sovryn Tech, and I am really, really honored to have them on board. They've been on board for a while now, and that is Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. We're talking about bullshit all in the last segment. This is no bullshit. This is the real deal. This is a business that has been around for decades. This is a business being run by a guy, Tim Fry, that is on the up and up in every way you can imagine, as ethical as they come. Love this guy. Okay, so if you want to get some precious metals, you want to get gold, silver, platinum, palladium, in all the different ways you like to get that stuff, or even if you want to sell some off, you can go to Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. I want you to go to gold.zog.ninja. Okay, that's gold.zog.ninja. And if you want to, tell them the Golden Stallion sent you. Believe me, they're going to know who you're talking about. They listen to the show. And I really appreciate them sponsoring Sovryn Tech, seeing the importance of Sovryn Tech, what Sovryn Tech does. It means a lot. This is the way to do it. And the best part is that Roberts & Roberts Brokerage is a Bitcoin preferred business. You can buy with Bitcoin all of your precious metals. Get into that. Like I always say, get into that real cold storage, right? And it doesn't get any colder than gold. So, diversify your wealth, diversify your investments, whatever. Get on top of this, okay? Precious metals should be a part of whatever you're doing, no matter how excited we are about cryptocurrencies and all that. You want to be distributed, you want to be diversified, like I said. So go to gold.zog.ninja, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Let's get back to it. Pixel, I'm being chased by assassin bots. I need an exit. Pixel!
Boy and Sovryn, come with me if you want to leave.
Who are you?
I'm Adelaide. I'll tell you more later. Get in the vehicle.
Get in a car with a scantily clad and beautiful woman? Guess it's been my first choice before. Let's go.
First choice.
It was a tale of two messaging apps. We're going to get into it. But before I give my piece, I am going to read a little bit here from RT, and let's just hit the tagline right out of the gate. Whatever you do, do not use Google Allo, Snowden says. Of course, that being Edward Snowden, which, folks, I have not seen the Snowden movie yet. Okay, I will get to it, and believe me, I will do a review when I do. So Google Allo came out this week. Before I start reading the rest of the story, Google Allo finally came out, which was announced way back at Google I/O 2016. That was May, June, something like that. And it finally came out, and things have really changed as far as what they were talking about back then. And also another thing that happened this week, and I'm going to get into that, is something that we talked about, I think this is back in April, that Facebook announced that they were going to start implementing end-to-end encryption on Facebook Messenger itself using the Signal protocol, much like they had already implemented with their alternative, or not so alternative, but soon to be probably joined messaging app, that being the popular WhatsApp. So let's start reading the story here, and then we'll break down into really what all this is about and what it all means. Google Allo, the new quote-unquote smart chat app, launched on Wednesday. That would be this past Wednesday, and right now we're the 24th of September 2016. Chat app launched on Wednesday is quote-unquote dangerous and should be avoided, according to whistleblower Edward Snowden. The ex-NSA contractor posted a series of tweets to warn everyone away from the chat app, which he says will, quote, record every message you ever send and make it available to police upon request, end quote. And here's his actual tweet. What is Allo? A Google app that records every message you ever send. Well, yeah, the same deal. He had another one. I don't know if they included here in this story, or they do. Okay, so I'll wait till I read it. To mention the other tweet, there was a funny one. But anyway, reading on, Allo designed to unseat chat pack leader WhatsApp, promises to deliver quick conversations with features like Smart Reply that can guess your answers and respond to messages with just the tap of a button, and Google Assistant, which answers your questions and helps you search for things directly in your chats. Now, Stallion breaking in, I'm going to stop there for a second. People, various developers noticed this week that any reference to Google Now has been completely scrubbed from Google apps and services. It's gone. There's no more Google Now. Now it's turning into Google Assistant. It's not like the necessarily the service itself has gone away, but Google Assistant is a very different animal. I'll describe that more in a minute. But boy, we're talking about Google earlier, folks. Google doesn't stick to fucking anything. Like, they just don't. I mean, how many... Oh, man, we're going to find out more on October 4th. They're going to have their big event where, supposedly there's a new router coming out which actually looks kind of interesting. There's a whole bunch of new products coming out, but the Nexus line is going to be dead. We already talked about that, how they're renaming everything to Pixel, all these different things. I mean, you go back to Google Reader and then you go forward and you talk about just so many different projects that they ran for maybe a year or two and then they just effectively canned. Google Now is going away. I mean, and Google Assistant, I think, is going to shape up to be something very different, even though, kind of its goals are the same. But let's read on with the story. How does Allo plan on predicting your every word and witty emoji, you ask? Quote, the more you use it, the more it improves over time, end quote, which basically means, that's straight from Google, which basically means they'll collect and store as much of your data as possible and then use artificial intelligence to guess your replies. And here's another tweet from Snowden thinking about Allo. Last year, our secret court approved 100%. He's talking about like FISA courts and all this. Our secret court approved 100% of requests for surveillance. They would cover Allo, saying that all of these things, whenever a request gets made, okay, we need a warrant to collect, say a chat session from Google. They always get stamped every single time. And so Allo is just another vector to where you are giving information effectively straight to, tyrannical organizations like governments, and they're all tyrannical. Reading on, however, the efficiency of time-saving typing may end up costing customers their already compromised privacy. When Google first announced the introduction of Allo earlier this year, they, too, had planned end-to-end encryption in what's called incognito mode and assured they would only store messages transiently rather than indefinitely. However, it now appears that Google won't be doing that after all. Wednesday's announcement revealed Google plans to store all conversations that aren't specifically started in that incognito mode by default. And so here's another this is a great tweet from Edward Snowden, probably the most popular one that he sent out. Free for download today. This would have been Wednesday. Google Mail, Google Maps, and Google Surveillance. That's Allo. don't use Allo, calling it Google surveillance. And that's probably what I'll end up calling that app from now on. And I might apply that. I think that's hilarious. Very clever. I might apply that to all, Facebook Messenger. We'll just call it Facebook surveillance instead of Messenger. As Snowden pointed out, reading on, last year, every single one of the NSA and FBI's 1,457 surveillance requests was granted by the U.S. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, and Allo stored data, i.e. your data, will be fair game too. In contrast, all of WhatsApp's chats are encrypted and unreadable, although they did announce last month they will now be sharing your contacts and who you talk to with Facebook. And that's the end of the story on that. But there's a lot to say about this. Understand that, don't, I think RT was they're being cautious now. They did this at least WhatsApp is automatically encrypted. And that's the thing. This incognito mode that uses Signal, okay, again, the implementation of Signal may not be the best. That's also true with WhatsApp. That's also true with Facebook Messenger. Okay. Going to those other alternatives, WhatsApp and whatever else, you're still especially if you're using WhatsApp, now that they've admitted that they're sharing data with Facebook openly, even though I think they're already doing that, you're really just part of the Facebook honeypot. Okay. Because Messenger this week also finally updated to where you can do end-to-end encrypted messages. And it has a few other features like self-destructing messages. I think that's a part of it. I used it very briefly just to test it out. And it's interesting because it makes everything, the chat box is black, which I thought that was kind of cool. But obviously that encryption only works on devices. That's how Signal has to work. Not necessarily how it has to work, but that is how it works, is that as I understand it, you cannot see these, and I couldn't make it to happen anyway, that you cannot use these whatever end-to-end encrypted message you were sending through Facebook Messenger on your mobile device wouldn't show up on your desktop. On the website or anything, which is by design, and I think that's really the right way to do it. But anyway, with Facebook stuff, that's all. You're still a part of the honeypot. Whether it's metadata, whether they can see what you actually typed and sent out or not, they're still collecting so much identifiable data about you. Okay, so Facebook Messenger finally releasing that. Yeah, use it. If you use it, yeah, go ahead and use it. It's better than nothing, but just don't pretend that somehow you're hiding anything from Facebook, really, at the end of the day, or from anybody else. Just be super clear on that. I wouldn't bet your life on Facebook Messenger's end-to-end encryption. Now, as Snowden is properly warning, I wouldn't I wouldn't trust Allo either. Even if they were, implementing incognito mode right out of the gate, I still wouldn't trust it because, again, there's still so much of that metadata. Now, it's important to understand that the main differentiator, the main reason that that Google wants people using Allo is because of this Google Assistant feature. Okay, now I've tested this out. I've taken a look. I've seen how it works and everything. And again, also keep in mind that if you're not using incognito mode, now Google has admitted, even though they said they wouldn't before, that they will be, storing for indeterminate amounts of time everything that you say. So Google lied to you, or they changed their mind, perhaps. But, when does changing your mind become a real danger? I think this is one of those cases. But anyway, so I've used Google Assistant, and it's interesting. You can, it has smart replies, kind of like Google's Inbox does for Gmail, where it figures out how you respond to emails. And so it will auto respond, or it'll give you options to auto respond with and all of this. But the Google Assistant does a whole lot more. Now you can ask it large, and again, their claim is it's going to get better over time, obviously, as more people use it. This is a project that's in beta that makes it very clear on the app. Of course, Google Maps is still in beta. Gmail was in beta for over 10 years. What does that term even mean when it comes to Google? Personally, I think everything at Google will always be in beta because you never know when, like Google Now or some other things, the rug gets pulled out from underneath you. But anyway, Google Assistant it does do some interesting things. Like I played like a movie trivia game with it. There's a bunch of different games that you can play with it. You can't exactly have a conversation with it. Kind of like, was it Xiaoxi or Show Ice, whatever from, that's being developed by Microsoft. That's kind of related to, it's not the Tay, it's not the Tay chatbot, but it's this app that is designed to be conversational with you. And like some people in China are falling in love with it, right? I think it's Xiaoi's from Microsoft. Anyway, it's not like that. to where you can do, at least not yet. Anyway, maybe that's a feature they plan on coming in. But this Google Assistant is really replacing Google now and what it does. You can ask it the weather and it'll tell you the weather, blah, 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 much like you used to be able to type into the Google search box. And largely, I imagine Google Assistant is the long-term goal of where Google wants everything to end up, where they want search to end up. You know, like they've said themselves, they are trying to build the Star Trek computer. Of course, I don't like the way they're going about that, but they are trying to create the computer where, you know, when you ask the computer a question, it gives you something back, you know, very relevant information to you back. And like they said, it'll get smarter over time. You know, I don't really see it as being any better than Cortana. It's better than Siri, because Siri just fucks shit up all the time. You know, or maybe any of these other ones that are out there. But, you know, it does what it does. I don't see it as a feature that people would even really want in a messaging app. It seems to be trying to be so much more. Obviously, the long-term goal here with Google Allo, before I talk about, you know, a little bit more on this, the long-term goal is to, like I said, it is to be that Star Trek computer, but I think it is to get to that point of zero UI that so many companies are hot on. And we know Google's hot on it, because before it was Alphabet and there was still Google X, now it's just X under Alphabet, you know, the company Alphabet, AlphaGoog as we call it. Astro Teller, we talked about this a couple of years ago on Sovryn Tech, where Astro Teller said that he is getting to the point to where we are past a UI. We are no longer interacting with the UI, and everything will be conversational, you know, or, you know, will be like, for example, the Star Trek computer, you know, maybe even Loxana Troy, or it wasn't Loxana Troy, but it was the same actress, you know, Michelle Barrett Roddenberry. Maybe she'll even talk back to you. Who the hell knows? But anyway, that, you know, that's their goal, is to get to that, to where there is no longer a device and you're just interacting with server farms. Now, I mean, that's Microsoft's goal as well. Like I said, I think Cortana is really the operating system now, or at least it's the face of the real operating system, which ends up being Microsoft's Azure. So all of these companies are really kind of doing the same thing. Allo is no different than what a lot of other companies are trying to do. And its end game, I don't think, is any different than what a lot of companies are trying to do. They're trying to get you to post-device into where you effectively probably would pay a subscription fee for all time, you know, for your entire life to interact with things. Now, some people might say that that's better than the world we're in now, to where you have to buy an $800 device or something every couple of years, you know, and instead to where maybe you could only pay, you know, $10, $15, $20, $30 maybe, you know, to pay for a subscription service, you know, into eternity. If you feel that way, you feel that way. I disagree. I don't like not having control over my data, or my devices for that matter. Like I've said many times on the show, I love a good hardware switch. Okay, but I think that's really the goal that's going on here. Now, the problem is also, you know, as far as it being encrypted and all this shit, no, people are all hot and bothered. It's like, yeah, when I need to, I can just switch over to incognito mode and all this. Yeah, but what happens is that when you go into incognito mode, and we've already knew that this would be the situation. Again, they announced this months ago, but you lose Google Assistant. And the main draw for this app is Google Assistant. So I think even them putting in end-to-end encryption is kind of bullshit. It's really just them trying to say, oh yeah, we have what these other people do too. We'll come over here, you know, and they're not really innovating. You know, you come over here and use Allo, blah, 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 blah. And I don't think that's enough. I think it's going to end up, Allo is already, and maybe they're already backtracking. Maybe Google is already backtracking on all this. I agree with everything Snowden said. If you didn't know as a Sovryn Tech listener to not use Allo already, well, anyway, now you know. But Allo, what's interesting is that this week also it got announced that some smartphone manufacturers are including Duo, which is so Allo is, you know, this chat and has Google Assistant and everything in it. Duo is the video and audio calling service. It's kind of the Skype, the basic Skype competitor that Google created, which there's some interesting things about it. The fact that it can work on a 2G, you know, like an edge network or something, is interesting. But Duo is getting pre-installed on some phones now. And I don't know that it's exactly part of the G apps collection. Like if you want to have the Google Play Store on your Android device as a manufacturer, you have to put Google Plus on there. You have to put Gmail on there. Like there's a bunch of apps that Google forces you to put onto your device. And I don't know that Duo is at that level yet, but what's interesting is that people are forcing Duo onto apps, but they're not forcing Allo. And Hangouts, which a lot of people thought Allo was going to replace, Hangouts just got updated to version 13, and they're still putting in a bunch of new features. So I know where the end game is with what Google's doing, but I don't like Allo seems very superfluous. Like it seems very, there's no real reason for this. And like, it almost seems like they just wanted to they wanted to trick people into getting conversational with Google Now, and so they created a chat app. This really isn't about creating a great chat app, and thus I wouldn't recommend using it for that reason alone, because first and foremost, it's not a messaging app. It's something else. It's really just, Google Assistant. So don't use this thing. This is just a terrible idea, and honestly, I don't think Google is going to stick with it. I'll be back with more. Whoa! Hey! Real quick, I want to tell you about someone else that is sponsoring Sovryn Tech, and I'm really honored to have them on board, CryptoCompare.com. I love this website for all of my, all my Bitcoin news, or all of, not just Bitcoin, but every cryptocurrency, so many cryptocurrencies to keep on top of the cryptocurrency game, the values, the great wallets to use, all of that. Check out CryptoCompare.com. I love this website. I use it every single day. Whoa, hey, you want to slow down?
I don't do slow. I move fast.
Okay, well, so you're French.
Everyone in the future speaks French.
Wait. The future?
From 2099. Permanent autonomous zone, Osiris-1. You've been there.
Oh, this isn't happening. It only thinks it's happening. How do I know you're from Osiris-1?
RGP fingerprint Omega 746566666.
Okay, you're legit. Hey, really, be careful. You drive like you're playing a video game.
That is how you programmed me. Game Talk.
It is time for Game Talk, where we talk video games, baby. Because that's one area of technology where I'm always excited. There's always something hot and happening, something happy going on there. Now, I got a couple things I want to talk about. First off is there's a link in the show notes, episode 194, okay, where it says Super Pitfall. You got to check this out. 30th anniversary of Pitfall. This just download it, rock it. In fact, it's interesting. So what it is, it's a very updated version of Pitfall, which, yes, is a game that came out 30 years ago. And they just did a phenomenal job on updating everything. I mean, it's not like a full refresh. It's just right. But it is a ROM modification. It is a ROM hack. You're not going to download the actual ROM that you could just, plug into the, plug into your emulator and rock and roll. You're going to have to actually modify the ROM, which anyway, link in the show notes talks about how to do all of that. But I think it's interesting that it gets done that way. That way you're, the developers of this don't get in trouble for, for messing with the game Pitfall, because, well, we're going to talk about this more in just a second, because that's a thing that's happening where people are literally like creating entire new versions of the game and just download, just offering up like say an exe that you can install or a ROM that you can just rock and roll with, and plug in and, plug and play in a digital sense. And then away you go. But those people are getting in trouble and getting takedown notices from Nintendo and other companies and all of this. So to offer the ROM hack and not the actual ROM is a very clever way to, and I appreciate it, to get around a lot of this, IP bullshit legislation. So anyway, check that out. Link in the show notes for episode 194. You'll see it'll say Super Pitfall. Get on top of that, baby. It's a good time, even though Pitfall is one of the most frustrating games in history, I think. I think you'll love it. Anyway, speaking of a game that I've recommended people try out in the past, and that sadly, and I applauded what it was doing, but sadly it is now officially no longer in development and has been taken down from a lot of ways that were being offered by the developers themselves, even, kind of unofficially. Pokemon Uranium, or Pokemon Uranium version. This was a game, it only came out like a month ago. As soon as people found out about it, like as soon as it hit up kind of a popular channel of some sort, like maybe it was mentioned on Kotaku or something, it ended up with nearly 2 million downloads inside of a week. And they claimed, so it gets sketchy as to whether or not Nintendo told them to take it down or what. But what I loved what the developers for that did for Pokemon Uranium is they built into, when you would download the XE for it, they built into it an updater, a self-updater within the app itself that you could, an XE that you could double click and then you could get the latest version of, of the game. And I think the latest version went up to was like 1.1 something. That was great because that means they didn't have to host the game anywhere and they didn't have to host updates anywhere. They could just feed them directly to you. Which, I mean, with some software that can be a very dangerous thing, but with, not that it was an auto update, you had to run it, but it could still be a dangerous thing. But with a game, this is largely benign. And that was cool because that circumvented all the laws around, you can't put this up there, you can't do this up there and all this. But then suddenly this week they just said, yeah, we stopped developing, we're done. So I don't know if Nintendo or whoever put the squeeze on them, or what happened, or maybe they're off, and they're going to develop their own, alternative type of game, which would be fine if they did. Or hell, maybe the right thing happened and maybe Nintendo hired these guys, to work on future versions of Pokemon. That'd be amazing. Whatever happened, it is sadly gone. And I really, to say sad, I mean that, because it is an awesome fucking game. You can still get copies of it. It's just not going to be actively developed anymore, and that updater doesn't really mean a whole lot. Just a shame, because that was so well done, and I really loved how they were, just end running, the legal and even a lot of the tech world by putting in that updater. And I hope future games pay attention to that. That way, it's kind of peer-to-peer. That way, you don't have to worry about somebody taking down your website or anything. You can just feed it directly to people. Anyway, so sadly that game is done. I will probably talk about fan remakes and fan remixes again in the future because there's a lot more on the way. But anyway, I have another topic I want to talk about this week. And this one, well, we're going to get into some very interesting subjects. And this absolutely has to do with gaming. Even though at first it may not sound like it. But this is a story from VentureBeat, and it's from August of this year, 2016. Dead or Alive's VR groping is uncomfortable, but virtual sex is only going to get messier. Now, the Golden Stallion here, I love to talk about sex. And I love sex in general. So this is obviously a topic that piqued my interest. And I'll read a little bit of the story here. But then, and you can read it in the show notes if you want to read the whole thing, because I'm not going to get into the whole article because the point will come up very quickly. And it's something I've described in the past, but I think, needs a little more exploration. So here's the story. VR sex isn't inevitable. It is already here. PlayStation VR is going to launch with support for the girl-oogling simulator Dead or Alive Extreme 3 in Japan. And a video showing off some of the groping mechanics in that game has gone viral. In the clip, a man pokes and prods at a woman in a bikini while she squirms and protests. It's uncomfortable to watch, but it is also tame compared to many of the VR sexual experiences available for the Oculus Rift and HTC Vive headsets on PC. The Dead or Alive clip is getting attention for a few reasons. It's a familiar franchise, and the man in the video has no qualms about violating the virtual person in front of him. Publisher Koei Tecmo is primarily drawing criticism for making sexual assault into a game. But while many of us recoil at what is happening in that video, a significant part of the VR community is chipping away at improving a broad spectrum of virtual sex experiences. And no matter how uncomfortable it makes us to see a man grabbing a dead or alive character's private parts, it is going to keep happening as more people begin adopting VR and AR technology. Virtual reality is not easy to write or talk about. If you've never used a VR headset, it's difficult to know what the tech will mean for you in your life. But I've discovered that I can get people to pay attention when I write about this new technology as long as I talk about one of two things: sex and money. It turns out that people can easily imagine what making money or having sex with something is like. Even when I'm not the one bringing them up, talking about VR with someone will usually end up as a conversation about what it means for pornography. Adult content is inextricably linked to virtual reality in the same way that it is with the internet. And as it is with the web, VR sex will not have boundaries. Apps like Play Club, Waifu Sex Simulator, and Imagine VR gives you pages of people and positions to choose from. The developers responsible for these projects, many of them hobbyists and amateurs, often take requests and listen for feedback about updates. And that has led to some of these games featuring models of characters from franchises like Overwatch, as well as scenarios that are far more shocking and upsetting than anything in that PlayStation VR Dead or Alive game. And here's the tagline: Dead or Alive is not the problem. Dead or Alive can be a problem. Certainly a lot of people don't like the way the series has long treated its women characters as cheesecake. But when it comes to the issues with virtual sex, it is not the real issue. The Dead or Alive clip shows the player, an adult man, grabbing at a woman who is asking him to stop. In this situation, her reluctance is likely done to arouse the user. And as upsetting as that is, the bikini girl isn't a girl at all. She is a piece of software. She is a digital fantasy. And I hesitate to, and I'm glad that they said this, Stallion breaking in, and I hesitate to judge on how people interact with their fantasies, even if that means some people will simulate a lack of consent. What I'm not afraid of judging is violating an actual human's consent, and we're right on the cusp of having to deal with that in a far more complex way than we ever have before. For example, a studio called Holodex, and that's with 3 X's at the end, is developing lifelike interactive 3D models of adult film stars. The plan is to sell these avatars and let customers do whatever they want with the simulated representation of real, live human beings. Holodex is working with the models to get their permission and to share the revenue. That means if you purchase the Daisy Destin Holodex character, she has given you the approval to do whatever you want to with that version of her. It won't work like that for most people. Now, I'm going to stop right there. Okay, there's more to the article. You can read all of it, but that gets to the kind of the, no pun intended, that gets to the end game of this whole conversation. So let's break into this. Now, there is an episode of Patreon-only Sovryn Tech content. It's actually in mine and Stephanie's hentai series that is releasing tomorrow. That is September 25th, 2016, Sunday, where we do talk quite a bit about consent, rape, all these different things, and kind of how they apply to Japanese culture. Now, that's one thing you got to really understand here, is that in Japan, this sort of stuff, like, I know people bristle when they hear the word rape culture, but Japan really does have one where women in real life absolutely get groped on trains. And yeah, I mean, like this is a thing that happens over there. And there is in a lot of Japanese entertainment, like hentai and other stuff, where non-consensuality is used as, I mean, like it's something for an audience, for a specific audience. Okay, I really, really hope you listen to that episode that I'm releasing tomorrow on to Sovryn Tech patrons only, and please don't hesitate to become a patron if you wish on Patreon. But anyway, so that's kind of a part of it. So it's like not shocking that this is coming out of Japan. Now, the Dead or Alive series has been under heat for years. People have criticized it for years, as long as there's been a Dead or Alive. Like there was the Dead or Alive volleyball game that everybody went nuts over because, oh, the women's boobs are bouncing, all over the place and all this. Honestly, I don't give a shit. Okay. Like I really don't. And I've talked about this actually in Patreon Q&A episodes where a lot of these things, a lot of the accentuation of not just female body parts, but also male body parts, being big and muscular, all these different things are actually narrative tools within a visual medium, like comic books and others. Okay. And that a lot of times, while yes, there are certainly people using it to sell sex, there is many times where it is genuinely a narrative tool to either, quickly see that somebody is larger than life, or perhaps that they're a god or magical or something, or, to show off, or to very quickly allow a player, especially like in a video game where, milliseconds count, that you quickly notice that something is either female or what, or that you quickly identify anyway, is the point. Okay, is that there's quick identification. So what's the point to that? Do the boobs bouncing have anything to do with that? Well, that's a whole other ballgame. And it is so, honestly, with the Dead or Alive games, it is so unrealistic, so ridiculously unrealistic that it is, to say that somehow it inspires something outside of that, I just don't agree. It's like Duke Nukem. Like Duke Nukem is like, I don't think that inspires violence. It's so fucking over the top. There's nothing real there. You can't do what Duke does. You can't do what any of these people do. I like stuff when it's so fantastically, outlandish, I get into that. So anyway, whatever. I don't really have a problem with the Dead or Alive games. This idea that it was programmed, obviously to highlight non-consensuality or, not giving consent with these characters in this, in the Dead or Alive game. Okay. Yeah. Like I think that's kind of shitty. Would I tell people that they can't do that? No, I'm not going to do that. All right. Now, as this applies to VR, because this is the bigger case, and this is something, and the article brings it up, is that what effectively happens if somebody, creates a CG or, a VR model of Taylor Swift without Taylor Swift's consent? What do you do then? Does Taylor Swift have any kind of legal recourse that she can go through? In my opinion, as an anarchist, I don't believe in any kind of legality. Okay. But in my opinion, even if I did believe in a legal framework, no. How are you going to stop this? That's even the point, is that there's a lot of times where people think that something is terrible, blah, blah, blah. And, but the ultimate point here is that if you have to, kind of use force, the use of the monopoly use of force is unethical to achieve a means or, to achieve an end. So, the ends cannot justify the means, right? But this goes true for so many things. How are you going to stop this? Like a lot of people, I made a joke, speaking of Snowden that we mentioned earlier, I made a joke on social media. I said, I think, just as a matter of principle, that there should be a perfect, high quality leaked digital version of the Snowden movie available online, for people to find. It would be the Snowden leak of the Snowden movie. And some people flipped out on me, saying like, what are you talking about? It's like, what about IP rights? What about this? Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, what are you going to do? There was no theft. There was like, nobody stole Taylor Swift. There's no victim here. Like, anybody that gets modeled, and believe me, it's not going to take long for all the shit to get open source, and you're going to be able to design your own models and whatever for this. And it won't even, charging for this is going to become the way of the dodo. Really. Okay. Nothing really got stolen. Your likeness, you don't own the photons that hit your face. You cannot stop this. You can find what a person does, perhaps, to be deplorable. Okay, you can find what this guy is doing to the VR character in Dead or Alive to be deplorable. You can do nothing about this, though. There is nothing to be done. There is no legislation to write. You cannot stop it. And if you did try to stop it, you would be trampling on so many different things. And you can bring up so many analogies, so many different, different cases where this effectively would turn into thought crime. Because are you going to stop people from imagining this stuff in their head? How is VR any different than what a person is thinking in their own mind? It's not any different. And you can't stop that. And if you did, that would be beyond dystopia. Beyond the worst dystopias you could imagine would be, controlling people's brains so that they didn't think about, stooping whoever. Now, if you're one of these people that thinks lusting in your heart is somehow in itself unethical, Christian or whatever, okay. But I'm not that. I lust in my heart 24/7, man. I put everything on the altar of lust at all times. Are you going to tell me that yes, it's something when there is a victim, when you actually physically go up to another actual human being and you try and do the shit, there's a problem. Okay. And believe me, I am against rape culture. I think it's an actual thing. All right. Just look at the TSA if you don't believe rape culture is a thing. All right. I am all on board with that. But folks, you can think this is deplorable. You can think it's bad, but you can't do anything about it. And you shouldn't do anything about it. You're not going to, this is the thing that excites me about VR. Yes, sex is one of the reasons I am excited about VR. I totally admit that. Remote sex, all kinds of, it's going to be great. Okay. I'm serious. All right. But one of the things that excites me about VR that people miss is that it frees your mind. It frees your creativity in ways that nothing ever has before. And is some of that going to be pretty perverted shit? Yup. Is some of it going to be stuff that I think is disgusting? Abso-fucking-lutely it is. But that doesn't mean you do anything about it. That doesn't mean that you can do anything about it. The VR revolution, not even AR, Because then I think with AR, then you run into the potential. That's a different story, because then you run into the potential for victimization, to where there is, perhaps theft, or there is damage to property or damage to person. Okay, AR is not as exciting to me as VR. VR is where, I'm reminded of something Kim Stanley Robinson said. I mean, he's like, look, consciousness is a solitary thing. It is solitude. We are not all connected. And we're not. Okay. And inside our minds, like he describes it as this bubble world inside our skull, all kinds of crazy shit happens that nobody knows about. And obviously nobody knows about it, so it almost proves the fact that no, we're not all fucking connected. Okay. But when we can give that bubble world some life and explore it, and perhaps even get past traumas and other things, that VR will allow for as a solitary experience and as a shared experience, if you want to share it, more so than AR. Oh, what a humanity we're going to have. I don't think it's that negative. I don't dig what's going on in with what this guy's doing in Dead or Alive, but the potential for the same technology to really open up people's minds. Oh, I'm on for that. Don't go legislating this shit.
Tonight, Knight Rider crashes into your living room.
I don't believe this.
Well, you'd better believe it. A lone crusader for justice drives this crime crasher.
The world's most fantastic car.
And together they can do just about anything.
After all, we're only human.
Don't press your luck.
And now, buckle up for action with the fastest show on television, Knight Rider.
See Knight Rider online today. And now back to Sovryn Tech. Pixel says it should be this panel.
We need to hack into the control center to shut down all of those assassin bots.
Well, you're the android. Can't you just jack in?
Oui, but the way I connect is more like a jack off.
Was that a joke?
Hacking is no joke.
Directly connecting certainly beats doing it with the keyboard.
You're notorious for your love of cyber sex.
Okay, now that was a joke. Just get hacking.
A quick hack solves everything. HackSec.
It is time for HackSec, where we talk issues of hacking and security, and this is going to be a real short one because, honestly, it doesn't take long to talk about. And this was user submitted. There was a story, and it was from a site called Quanta, and of course, link is in the show notes, and it's hacker-proof code confirmed. Now, this is actually in direct relation to a story we covered a good long while ago on Sovryn Tech, where DARPA was trying to develop a drone that was hack-proof, that was hacker-proof. Like, you couldn't access it, because that's a real danger with drones, is that, your opposition could take control over it. So Microsoft apparently has been working, they have a whole project around this. I think it's HACMS. And it's being headed by Jeanette Wing at Microsoft, HACMS. And the idea is that, well, this is code that we can, at each partition, we could effectively block off further access. Okay, it's a very simple idea, but it just boils down to that this would be literally hacker-proof. There's no way, you're not going to have any bugs in this code. There won't be any 0 days, and you're not going to be able to get in. Now, the reason I don't have to spend much time on this, because, the listener asked, what are my thoughts on this? And at first, I'm reading and I'm like, oh, this is very interesting. It's like, I instantly don't believe it that there's hacker-proof code. And the thing is here is that the story itself says that there isn't. And here it is, right from Jeanette Wing, who's the head of this whole project with Little Bird is the name of the drone that they've been testing it on. Quote, "We're not claiming we're going to prove an entire system is correct, 100% reliable in every bit, down to the circuit level," Wing said. Quote, "That's ridiculous to make those claims. We are much more clear about what we can and cannot do," end quote. Folks, there's the story. Hacker-proof code confirmed? Bullshit. They're even saying, Jeanette Wings is coming right out and saying, it's like, no, we're not saying that this is 100%. We're not saying, so it's not hacker-proof. And I remember, unbelievable. I remember when they were talking about Little Bird, this is back in 2015. And like, as soon as they said, oh yeah, DARPA's creating, this hacker-proof drone and all that. And I instantly put down my computer and I said, challenge accepted. So, I mean, it's interesting what they're doing. They're working out mathematics to where it's kind of self-proving code. Okay. Here at this HACMS, I don't know if they call it Hackums or something, but they're, Jeanette Wing, the head of the whole fucking project, is admitting this is not 100%. So it's not hack proof. Like that's a total clickbait line, headline. And I think that's bullshit to even to let that out there. So as much as I'd love for everybody, not just, state actors, not just governments, to be able to write hacker-proof code, no, it doesn't really exist. You can get better, you can do better, and I'm sure that, the methods being developed at HACMS, will allow for that, and I hope that all gets, a lot of the tactics or, the tools that they're using will be available to everybody, because it makes sense to have everything as at least close to hack-proof as possible. Understand that, no, there is not a drone out there that is completely unhackable that DARPA, / the U.S. government has access to. Absolutely not. And the developers themselves are telling you that's just not possible. And I agree. The idea of hack proof is, it's something to continually strive for, kind of like Utopia, right? Keep striving for it. But you may never get 100% there. In fact, I would argue that certainly with coding, there's no way that you're going to get 100% there. Self-healing is a lot better than necessarily self-checking. That's where things get interesting, and that's another direction that we've talked about in past episodes, like during that last robotic hack contest. Anyway, no hack-proof code. I'll be back with more.
The reviews are in, and Babylon 5's a winner. The New York Daily News says Babylon 5 could make Star Wars look like a walk in the park. The Chicago Sun-Times calls it a welcome addition to the sci-fi universe. Impressive, perfectly scaled for TV, raves the LA Times. And the Kansas City Star says Babylon 5 is one space station you're likely to want to visit frequently. See for yourself what everyone's talking about on Babylon 5.
Babylon 5 is available for download on your favorite torrent site. See it now to experience the greatest show in television history. Babylon 5. Adelaide, why are we stopping?
In the future, we have a custom.
What's the custom?
After a successful mission, a team usually is love, a ménage à trois, or orgy.
Yeah, there's only two of us.
I already contacted the others to come join us. I love women too.
Whoa, Adelaide, you're beautiful, but you're an android.
I am fully functional. I am programmed in multiple techniques, a broad variety of...
Wow, I guess so. You did say you move fast. Adelaide, the future is going to be so good.
The climax.
It is time for the climax where, boy, did I say I lust all the time. I do. Where I get to talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. But I'm actually going to talk about something that was sent in by another user, I say that all the time. I say users. Listener. I guess. Sometimes my head's so deep in this tech shit. Anyway, so I appreciate the listener, submitting that last story for HackSec. I thought that was a really interesting thing to talk about. Now, I do want to say, I want to address quickly when we were talking about Allo and, and Facebook Messenger and all that, I didn't actually tell you what did I recommend using instead. Well, I recommend using what the Hillary Clinton campaign uses now. That is just straight up raw, the Signal Messenger. Just use Signal. Flat. That's it. game over. Okay. Use Signal, or use my personal favorite, PGP encrypted email. That's how you communicate with people, folks. And you can do PGP very easily now, thanks to Open Keychain, on an Android device anyway. I'm not so certain on iOS. But anyway, please use Signal. I mean, hey, it's what, some of the greatest, shysters and thieves and tyrants in the world's ever seen uses, that being Hillary Clinton. Not that Trump's any better. Fuck all that politics shit. Anyway, so I want to get into this story here, and this is an interesting one. And Sovereign Tech listeners love it when I get into history, and this is a nice little amalgamation of some technology and some very real history. But I think there's a twist here that these stories are missing and maybe intentionally leaving out, because I find it kind of odd. So this is from the AP. Scanning software deciphers ancient biblical scroll. And this is from September 21st, 2016. Reading on, the charred lump, this is in Jerusalem, the charred lump of a 2,000-year-old scroll sat in an Israeli archaeologist's storeroom for decades, too brittle to open. Now, new imaging technology has revealed what was written inside, the earliest evidence of a biblical text in its standardized form. The passages from the book of Leviticus, scholars say, offer the first physical evidence of what has long been believed, that the version of the Hebrew Bible used today goes back 2,000 years. So what they're saying is that they have scanned this. They used imaging technology. Okay. In fact, I'm just going to cut to the chase here. Okay. They found this. It was in an ark in a synagogue. And if you're not, well, I was raised Jewish. If you don't know about Judaism, I won't go into all of that. But effectively, in a box in a synagogue, there was these burnt, crumpled up pieces of paper, and you couldn't open them up. But they're very, very old. And the scanning technology that was used, that was partially developed by Google, and I think also some alphabet soup organization within the U.S. government. What a shock! Was able to actually read what this crumpled up, text had to say. That if you tried to unfold it, it would have just, fallen into a million pieces. So this is very interesting technology to use. I totally agree with that. Obviously, you can see the potential surveillance uses of such technology, of course, which is probably the real reason that it got developed, not shockingly, by, again, AlphaGoog and the U.S. government. But its use here is kind of fascinating, to apply it to, an ancient text, and to find out that the book of Leviticus, effectively, that you read today, or that is translated from, the Biblica Hebraica, whatever that, like a lot of the Old Testaments that you read in most modern translations of the Bible. Again, folks, I'm an atheist. Okay. I was, I'm ethnically Jewish, got raised Jewish for a while, then parents converted to Christianity, blah, blah. So I've got a pretty wild history with this shit, but I am an atheist, so don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. But anyway, a lot of the modern translations of the Bible that you read, they come from certain codexes or codices and certain versions of it. Like the most popular one for the Old Testament is one that was found in a Russian gentleman's collection, 100 years ago. But it's kind of based off of a medieval manuscript, a manuscript from, the 16th, 17th century, something like that. So to find out that there is, to find a 2,000-year-old version, again, just 2,000 years ago. So we're not talking about a 5,000-year one. I'm going to get into that in a second. Okay. But to find a version of the book of Leviticus, and to find out that that it is very similar to the text that the medieval text, effectively, the modern text will say, that we use now, or that people use now to make translations, is fascinating. I totally agree with that. I think that's really something, and that's interesting to discover. Okay. That these versions are the same, because there's the claim by a lot of people, including a lot of Christians, or not a lot, but some Christians, I should say. But there's a claim that really the Hebrew Bible, the Torah, the Tanakh that we have today is a completely medieval creation. Like that it's not from, 2,000 years ago or even earlier. Okay. That it is from today. Now, to some degree, we've known that that's not true, because you have the Dead Sea Scrolls, okay, which were, of course, found decades ago, in Qumran. With the Dead Sea Scrolls, you have texts from, or, that were buried, I guess like 3rd century BCE, something like that, or maybe 2nd. But those, you have copies of the book of Isaiah, and you have other, texts that do exist within, Torah, within the Hebrew Bible, within the Old Testament, that you can kind of confirm. And I've seen some of them, some of these very old versions of the book of Isaiah, and they read, when you translate them, from this, from Hebrew, they read very much exactly like what you have, say, in a King James Bible, or JPS version, or whatever you happen to be using. This isn't, it's interesting. I don't want to write off, kind of the historical importance of this discovery, but if you read the whole article, they never really talk about the fact. It's like, okay, so the book of Leviticus, we can now say, is largely 2,000 years old. But the claim of the book of Leviticus is that it's like 6,000 years old, something like that, more in that range. So you're not really proving anything. Okay, yeah, you've proved it's not a medieval creation. Great. But you're not proving like divine origin, which I would say there isn't. Again, I'm an atheist. You're not proving that it's something that, the Israelites or the Jews have been living off of, like the Levitical law for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years, more than 2,000 years. You're not proving that at all. And in fact, it becomes an even greater problem when you consider that, like I mentioned the book of Isaiah, which you do have, a much older version of that than you do of this book. It's older than this book of Leviticus. The book of Isaiah is an interesting animal in the Old Testament, in the Tanakh, or whatever you want to call it, the Torah. Because there's not a whole lot of mention of a lot of these weird laws. There's a ton of prophecy. There's tons of important things said in it, but there's not, it's strange. Now, not to say that, the time that we know that that Isaiah was alive, there were other kind of prophets that do, if their texts are actually, if they are contemporary, okay, that do mention a lot of Levitical law, kashrut law, and all these different things. But Isaiah does not. So it's almost like Isaiah belongs to, one could almost argue that Isaiah belonged to a different sect of Judaism, or of the Israelites. So anyway, what I want to get into here is that I want to paint a picture for you, because I think a lot of people would use this to somehow prove the Bible when it doesn't, for some of the reasons I've already described. Okay, but there's others, and there are parts of history that some sects within Judaism, some, denominations within Christianity and others will admit to you, but mainly they don't want to talk about it. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to go kind of back in time to, let's say, 7th century. How about that? 7th century BCE. Okay. So we're talking, I guess the 620s, something like that. And it is the reign of Josiah, King Josiah. This is, we are back in Israel. Okay. Granted that, he's the king of Judah, which Israel at the time was split into two kingdoms. There was a kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. Israel was the northern kingdom. Judah was the southern kingdom. And Josiah, during his reign, he starts to, he's talked about by many commentators, rabbis and all that, as being a very holy man. He's this king that really brought back, worshiping, Yahweh, and doing it the right way. And so he goes on to help rebuild and, redecorate much of his great, well, not exactly, but his ancestors, that being Solomon, his temple, and getting it back into shape. Now, during this process of getting Solomon's temple back into shape, okay, this is before the Second Temple period, which, is after the Babylonian captivity. This is just a few generations away from when the Babylonians, conquer Judah, and, then you have the Israeli diaspora and all this different stuff. Anyway, I'm skipping over a ton of history here. Okay. But because I want to get to a point. So when this renovation of Solomon's temple is happening, a priest named Hilkiah is, going through various rubble and walls and all this stuff, to renovate Solomon's temple. And he finds this text. He finds, effectively, what would be called a codex. Or he finds a scroll. How about that? He finds a scroll. And this scroll, he starts reading it. And when Hilkiah, when he reads it and he realizes what it is, he runs and he brings it to King Josiah. And King Josiah starts, perhaps taking a look at it. I mean, I'm kind of narrating around, a few Bible verses here. Okay. But Josiah, apparently, rips his clothes and in modern terms says, "Holy shit, we've been doing this all wrong." Because what Hilkiah found was the book of Deuteronomy. They lost it. They lost the book of Deuteronomy. This isn't after the Babylonian captivity. I mean, this is a few generations. What was Josiah, 16th king of Judah, something like that? I mean, so however many times separated from King David, and Josiah is in the lineage of Jesus, if you're into that sort of thing. Okay. And, they find out that they haven't been worshiping right. They lost their way. They didn't just lose their way. They lost the Torah. So did they even have, considering that the book of Deuteronomy, as you read it today, okay, and there's some question about, was it the entire book of Deuteronomy? Was it just part of the book of Deuteronomy? I mean, there's lots of debate around that. Okay. But it is largely accepted, by Rashi and others, that Deuteronomy, that's what Hilkiah found. Now, Deuteronomy does a great job of repeating a lot of the book of Leviticus, the book of Numbers, the book of Exodus, all this different stuff. Okay. Which Isaiah, by the way, does not do a good job. That's what I mentioned earlier. But regardless, it covers a lot. It recovers a lot of that ground. Like you have the 10 Commandments get repeated in the book of Deuteronomy. If you had one book that you were to run off of, that you were supposed to create Judaism around, that's the one you want. You want Deuteronomy. In fact, speaking of Jesus, it's interesting. The only book you ever really hear, I mean, you hear stories of David, but the only, Mosaic text that you ever hear Jesus quote from is the book of Deuteronomy. That's interesting because it's the one book that we know that they had, that they found. When you're debating, do these books look similar, or do we have the autographs, as they're called, kind of the originals? Do we have anything that looks remotely like the originals? Do we have anything with actual historicity, actual age behind it? Or is this all just some kind of, more recent creation, blah, blah, blah? What is the deal here? And with Deuteronomy, this is the one where within, Judaism's own history, own chronology, that we know they didn't have for a while. For a few hundred years, it's a good bet. So here's the thing, is that, the book of Leviticus that supposedly we found out, oh yeah, it's the same as it was 2,000 years ago. Well, is it the same one that they obviously didn't have in the 7th century BCE? I don't know. So then who the fuck cares if it's the same one from the year 2000 or, from 2,000 years ago? It doesn't matter. because you can barely prove, a lot of books. I mean, you can kind of prove the age of the book of Isaiah, which is interesting. You can kind of prove the book of Daniel. There's lots of things that the Dead Sea Scrolls, came along to prove. But you have a story within the Old Testament, within Torah itself, that says that for a good long while, they lost that shit, and they never, ever talk about, it is just one scroll. Like, it is largely accepted. They just found one scroll. They didn't find all 5 books of Moses. Where did those other books of Moses go? And the thing is that you could say, well, they still had them. No. If the Jews had the other books of Moses, then the book of Deuteronomy wouldn't have been that big a deal. It wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have changed everything that they were doing in the kingdom of Judah back in, 625 BCE. Or whatever, in his reign, he had like a 31-year reign somewhere in that area. So, yeah, I get it. This is kind of cool. It's kind of exciting, but it's not proving shit. I mean, it's not proving anything as far as Judaism or Christianity goes. That doesn't mean I don't think that there's not something to a lot of the history that is recorded in Torah. I think there is. Okay. But I also think that we're a long way from coming even close to claiming any kind of divine origin or to claiming any kind of real historicity. In fact, I argue, okay, that the other books of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, right? I argue that those books, and in fact, Deuteronomy, I mean, it's kind of funny that it's a book of Moses because it talks about him dying. So obviously that was, finished off by Joshua, son of Nun. But those books, I think that they were largely built around this book of Deuteronomy that they found, and that you're not getting any kind of autograph, and that the history that is described in those books may not be legit. Like I mentioned with Isaiah mentions nothing about the Exodus. That's not even a part of the program. So were there a ton of additions, say, after the Babylonian captivity? Were there a ton of additions in these, in the supposed sacred texts that actually came from the Babylonians, that the Jews learned from them? That's a concept called pan-Babylonianism. And yeah, I mean, the evidence is found wanting. Like I said, I'm really excited, okay, that this was, the book of Leviticus we have now is the same one from 2,000 years ago. I think that's very interesting, as I've already said. But it's nothing more than that. And you can go to 2 Kings, the book of 2 Kings for yourself, and you can read the story of Hilkiah and what Josiah, what they found, that they found that. All right, you don't have to trust me. Never. You don't ever have to trust me. So, but oh man, it's funny that they just kind of leave that out, and they are technically accurate. It's like, oh, it proves that this is 2,000 years old and all this. That doesn't matter. You need to prove to me, for me to want to believe a lot of the history being claimed by Judeo-Christian traditions, okay, you need to prove to me that it's 5,000 years old. 2,000 means shit. It doesn't do anything for anybody. And I'm sure there was a ton of Christians like, see, modern technology is proving the Bible, blah, 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 is proving that God's word is inerrant. No, you didn't. You've got a huge problem. When it comes to proving the inerrancy of the Bible, or what even books are actually part of the Bible. There's so many things like this. Like, most people don't realize, what is the oldest book of the Bible that we can gauge? The book of Job. The book of Job is a very strange book. When you read that, it can kind of read on its own. You could build your own religion around it, honestly, if you wanted to. It has, separate, and you could say, well, you can't do this. Fine, whatever. Separate the narrative from the Hebrew, from it being written in, Hebrew and whatever else, perhaps some versions of Aramaic, or if you're into the Septuagint with the Greek or something, separate it from that. Like, there's no reason that needs to be a Christian or Jewish text. There isn't. People's perceptions are so skewed. I thought that, like I said, it was very interesting that this was here, but it really doesn't prove anything. At least to me as an atheist, if it comforts you as a religious person, well, okay. But it does absolutely nothing, for me. So you got to prove things to be a lot older than that. You've got to do better than that. But those texts, the things I'm describing, they really don't exist, and maybe they don't exist for a reason. Where we have these 5,000-year-old or 4,000 or 3,000-year-old scrolls. They're not there. So anyway, I appreciate the listener, mentioning that. I'm honored. What honors me is that that I can, that you want me to talk about history and all that. And I really appreciate that, because I love getting to talk about history. As I say all the time, I am a gamer first, a historian second, and I am a tech journalist third. So anytime I get to talk about the other two, aside from the tech journalism, I'm always happy to do that. Anyway, had to do a little bit of overtime. So just to keep my affiliates happy, we'll end it here. If you want to help out the show, please go to patreon.com/sovereigntech. Okay, become a Sovereign Tech patron. We get more people every single week. I'm honored that people get on board with this. We're doing very well. We're starting to reach, some of our goals here. And I put out so much content every week that is only for Sovereign Tech patrons. So if you want to take advantage of that, please, this is the way to do it. The important stuff, don't worry, I talk about it here. Okay, you're not losing anything if you're not a Sovereign Tech patron. Okay, you're just not getting, the bonus stuff, or getting, being able to do Q&A and all that. So anyway, if you want to become that, please do patreon.com/Sovereign Tech. I've got a whole series coming out this week, actually, that'll be fun, and then it'll be a regular Q&A episode. Anyway, enough. Carpe Lucem, everybody. Woo! I hope you dug the episode, and we'll see. I guess maybe we'll be keeping an eye on if Arcade City actually does get released. Maybe I'll do like a weekly update. Did Arcade City come out yet? Nope. Anyway, Carpe Lucem, everybody. Go have some fun. I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.